Good morning. I see a lot of new faces here, so a lot of you probably don't know who I am. So I am Brian Roundtree. As AJ told you, I'm the corporate safety director. I've been with Haskell for 19, almost 20 years. Haskell's a great company. I've been in safety for about 30 years. I've only worked for two companies, and I would definitely say that you are in the right place if you want to, as you're here with the Haskell company, because it truly has been the most fulfilling employer that I've ever had in my career. And I started working when I was about 14 or 15 doing different things. And again, Haskell's a great place. And we definitely take safety very seriously. And I want you to work with me just a little bit on this presentation because it is the first time that I've done this. So I'm probably going to ad-lib a few things that you might see here on the screen as we're going through it. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to stop me, stick your hand up if you don't understand something, and we'll work through it. And if I don't know the answer right off, I will make sure that I get you that answer, okay? And I do answer my phone 24/7, unfortunately, because I know somebody in here was talking about getting stuff from Hawaii. I get stuff from Hawaii at all different hours, and I don't like that 6-hour time change. It's not a fun thing at all. Yeah, well, yeah, 5. Well, yeah, if you observe daylight savings time, otherwise it's still 6 hours. So please work with me. So safety is very important here at the Haskell company. You probably all during your when you were coming through to start out, I'm sure that you went through some safety and you understand that we have our code of safe practices. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. So our safety performance and our performance overall has gone up and down a little bit over the last few years, but we've always been well above, or well below anyway, what the industry standard is. Last year we did have 5 recordable injuries. Out of those, there was 2 of them that were lost time injuries. The big thing with this number right here, only 2 of those 5 were actual injuries that occurred by craft employees. The other 3 were admin. We had an admin person slip down some stairs. We had one admin person that fell down some stairs when they went out to a job site. So actual, at the job site itself, people putting our work in place, we only incurred 2 recordable injuries, which is pretty incredible when you think that we worked a little over 2.7 million man hours. Those are Haskell man hours. All right? 84% of our projects worked safely last year, which also is a pretty incredible statistic. So our recordable incident rate is a 0.36, and you notice here on the board we have a BLS rate of 2.8. Well, that's what the industry standard for our SIC code says, that on an average, that's the rate for everybody in our peer group, and we're at a 0.36, which is pretty incredible when you look at it. We're well below that. One of the ways that we truly look at how we perform in the field is this number here that's called work in place, and that's Haskell man hours that we're expending in the workplace, along with our contract partners or our subcontractors. We worked almost 4.4 million man hours last year in 2018, obviously, and we had 27 recordable injuries across that with our contract partners. You'll notice I only have 2 there for Haskell, so we had 29 total, which puts our recordable incident rate at a 1.35, which is still well below what the Bureau of Labor Statistics says somebody doing the type of work we do would incur. We need to get that lower, obviously, because we did have 27 of them. We think we capture just about everything. We'll talk a little bit later about being transparent. And if I go back, and I don't have a slide here, and go back all the way to about 2013, you'll notice that between 2013 and 2018, our numbers have gone up and down. And then there was a period in there that our numbers went way up. And part of that was because we were transparent, and we were truly honest with ourselves, and we were looking at things a little bit differently when we started capturing what our subcontractors are doing. Because again, we only execute probably 20% of our own work. The rest of it is contracted out. So we wanted to see, how are we really doing in the industry when we take our contractors into that number. So we need to work a lot more on it. However, a 1.35 is still well below the industry average. But again, a lot of work to do. And there's just a little graph of what we've done since 2013. And you see little blips in there. There's some other ones coming down off of 2013. One of the things there is, with the market conditions after 2018 or 2008, 2009, a lot of our craft employees, and we were there was a lot of people that got out of the construction industry. There was a lot of people that didn't have a whole lot of experience working in construction, so our rates went up a little bit until we got folks trained, and then we got the right people in place. So a recordable injury, what is a recordable injury? Well, here in the United States, if somebody has, if we have to take them to the doctor and they're prescribed a prescription medication, they get stitches, they have a loss of consciousness, obviously broken bones, that would be a recordable injury. Now we can go up north into Canada, and there's a province in Canada that a person can actually lose 2 fingers, and it's not recordable. It's not until they lose the 3rd finger that it becomes recordable. I don't understand that. And then you go to the next province from there, and it's pretty much if you have to take them to the doctor for anything, then it is recordable. So there's stuff that's kind of across the board, but here in the United States, it's all the same across the board. So how do we figure out a recordable incident rate? Well, you saw that we had 5 total, so in order to figure that out and to put everybody in the same kind of, apples with apples, it's the number of recordable injuries that you incur times 200,000 man hours, which is 50 people working a normal, standard year. And then you divide that by the actual number of man hours that we work, and that gives you the recordable incident rate. So that puts everybody in the same boat. So when we're looking from, one contract to another, everybody has to use the same statistic. So hazard recognition is very important. You're seeing this photograph right here that was thrown into the presentation. We definitely would not want a situation like that, because that's actually a 30-foot drop that's on the other side of that doorway. So we definitely wouldn't want to stand in there. Now, is that opening, is that really a hazard? It's not really a hazard if people don't activate it, right? And how do we activate a hazard? We walk up to it, and what's everybody want to do? Hey, that door's open. I wonder where that thing goes, and then they walk over there to it. So we need to make sure that we eliminate those, so that way we eliminate the opportunities for people to put themselves into positions where they could get hurt. So some of the basics of risk management. When somebody does get hurt on one of our projects, one of the things that Haskell does that's a little bit different than probably some other contractors, we always want to make sure that the individual is taken care of. We want to make sure that they have the best care. And how do we do that? Well, before we ever start a project, we make sure that we have a good occupational medical facilities and hospitals in close proximity to take folks to. We also want a member of management to accompany that individual to the medical facility. And we want to do that, again, for 2 reasons. One, we want to make sure that the doctors in that facility provides them with the best level of care, but we also do have some risk management in there where we want to make sure that the details surrounding the injury are effectively conveyed to the attending physician and to the hospital, so that way, they don't end up telling them something that didn't really occur, and they try to do different testing or different procedures. So we want to make sure that, one, they get the best care, but we also are protecting ourselves as well. We want to make sure that we have prompt notification back to either myself or Lance Simons, so that way we make sure that again, we have the best care, we get the right people. Do we need to respond to it? If it was fairly a significant incident, I'll make sure that we have, safety responds, management responds out to take care of the project, and potentially if we have a client situation, we're taking care of the client as well. And then we do a supervised report of injury. And the reason why we want to do that is we want to understand what are the contributing factors that made that injury or that incident occur, so that way we can try to eliminate it. Or I know you talked a little bit about design. Can we design something differently? We've had some, we have some safety requirements that are up and above OSHA, and several years ago I was out in California, and this has to deal with fall protection, a requirement for 100% fall protection. Well, I'm out in California, I got a call from a project in New Jersey because the contractor said that they could not follow our 100% fall protection while they're hanging steel. And I said, well, that's interesting. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to do it, but if you please, we're in this unique opportunity here because the steel hasn't been fabricated yet, and the steel is being fabricated by Haskell Steel Shop, and I think Steve Gibson will talk a little bit about steel when I think he's next. But at the steel shop, you just tell me where it is you're not going to be able to tie off 100%, and we'll knock a hole in that column so that way you have an anchor point. So I got on a plane. I think I spent a little over $3,600 to get the very last seat out of San Francisco to fly into New Jersey to meet with these folks. Landed at 8 o'clock in the morning. Our meeting was at 9:30 when we got there. They said, well, we looked at it and we figured it out. We can abide by your 100% fall protection rule. Great. This is the bill for the $3,600 that we just expended to come here, and then I got back on the plane and went back to California, which was not a fun day. But that's how serious we are. We were willing to do that, to sit down with them, and how do we make it safe for them, okay? And that way we don't have any falls, because we have had some falls previously. So when it comes to the cost of an actual injury, we have direct costs. Direct costs, the actual medical care, compensation for the individual, and then the premiums we pay from on a risk management workman's compensation. But that's really kind of what they call the tip of the iceberg, because it's all the other, those are the direct costs. All the indirect costs, property damage, equipment damage, delays. One of the biggest ones that's in here, is really the image and morale. The morale on the job site whenever we have a significant incident occur, and then the image that we project out into the community. And that is something that the Haskell Company, you really are working for a company that values people, because I'll tell you how we handle stuff when we have a significant injury. We respond. We take care of the situation. We take care of our employees, and we take care of the client. A lot of companies don't do that. We had a significant injury or significant incident that occurred about 10 years ago right here in downtown Jacksonville. And a couple people lost their lives, unfortunately. And we responded to it. We spared no expense to find out why it happened. We opened our books up to OSHA, and very few companies will do that. I hosted OSHA's head engineers here in this building and showed them a binder of all the forensic engineering that we did, which we weren't obligated to do because it was a subcontractor that it incurred this injury. But we went through the expense of bringing in forensic engineers to find out why it happened. Because like Steve Halverson and I, the way we looked at it is we cannot bring those individuals back. But what we can do is we can spare no expense to find out why it happened and present that information to the industry to keep it from ever occurring again. And that's what we did. That's the type of company you work for. We will find out why it happened and make sure we're protecting other folks. And I highly doubt that there's other companies that would hand that binder to OSHA, because what's behind that? Lawyers try to take that stuff and then they try to kind of twist things, but we didn't care about it because it was about doing the right thing, and that's the company that you work for. Okay, so we have all these other things for indirect costs. So when we look at it, since 2013 to 2018, we've had about $586,000 in medical claims. That's just for Haskell employees. So if we take a 4.0 multiplier on it, that comes out to about $2.3 million. So when we run through all of that and we put that multiplier on it, that means we will have had to have executed about $52 million worth of work in order to pay for those injuries over those, since 2013. So any of you that worked on the Nestle Dallas or the Wyoming Instructional Building, AFCO ground support, or the St. Pete Biosolids project, which all have been pretty successful projects for the Haskell Company, thank you, because you have paid for, those profits didn't go into our ESOP, that paid for those claims expenses. All right, so if you worked on them, thank you. But we need to do better so that way we don't have to use those projects to pay for workman's compensation claims, right? So our safety data, we manage everything on the job site. So we manage our own folks, our contract partners. Again, those are our subcontractors. We didn't like the term subcontractor because it sounds like they're beneath us. And again, I think Jonathan and Frank talked a little bit about it, that we're all a team on a job, even our contractors. So we decided from a safety group standpoint anyway, we were going to call them our contract partners, because that's what they really are. They're our partners in making sure that we're successful in everything we do. But we own the job site. Everything that happens on a job, we own it. Even if we're working in somebody else's house, if it happens, we own it and manage it. So some of the things we do, we have a clear and consistent safety directive. Coming down, safety will not be subverted in the interest of time or profit. And that has, Haskell, since its inception of our safety program, that has been the same motto we've had in there. We will not subvert safety in the interest of time or profit. And a lot of folks, think, well, safety costs money. And how many of you think safety costs money? I mean, because there's a line item right now. We have specifically removed, and when you're doing your budgets, safety is not supposed to be a line item in there, because we don't say it's 1%, 2% of the contract value. It's whatever it takes to work safe is what we need to put in there. All right, and that was a decision that Steve Howerson made several years ago, because we used to have a percentage that was put in there and we got rid of it. It's whatever it takes. But safety doesn't really cost money, because what is safety? Safety really is a part of your planning, which is part of your schedule. So when people say, well, you guys are all concerned about schedule, not about safety. Well, schedule is the most important thing. And safety is only a component of that, because you're planning, and when you're planning the project, you're planning how it's going to go together, all the parts and pieces. Safety is just part of that planning process. So if you have a good plan and you have the right schedule, safety will be taken care of in there, right? Does everybody kind of agree with that? I mean, so safety, it's not something separate. It doesn't cost more. What costs is when you don't plan safety in, then it costs money when you have to stop. And we just ran into that right down the street on a project, because we didn't have the right parts and pieces for doing the excavation work on a hospital, and we got shut down for 3 days because we didn't have the right stuff. Now, that cost money. Had we planned it in the beginning, had all the right stuff, we wouldn't have had that issue. All right? So safety doesn't really cost money. It's all part of the planning process. If you must choose, always choose safe. So some of the things we've done. Now, on the sheet here, it says Industry Institute 9 best practices. That's actually up to, I think, 15 or 16. However, we don't subscribe to some of those others, because they're really kind of subcategories of the main 9. And one of the most important ones there is leadership involvement in the job. And everybody saw leadership, because we have our superintendents, we have safety that comes out, project managers, and the DOCs. But that's not the leadership involvement that we're really looking at. The leadership involvement is truly, Jim O'Leary, JP coming out, folks like Frank Mangin coming out to the job site and looking at everything and engaging our contract partners and our own PCEs to make sure that we are providing them a safe place of employment. That's where that management involvement is. I know, going back with a previous employer that I had, that I've still got notes, handwritten notes from 30 years ago, when a gentleman that was the president of the division I worked for, which at that time was a $4 billion a year enterprise, 20 some years ago, and he hand wrote me a note, let me know how much he valued my participation and my involvement and commitment, to making a project safe. It really meant something to me to have that. And I think that, everybody in this room probably would say the same thing, and the craft employees in the field look at it the same way. And that's where our Take 5 audit comes in, is getting our management folks to engage them, understand what they're going through, and what are some of the things we can do to make their job safer. So I think that really makes a big difference. And then our Code of Safe Practices. So 19 years ago when I started, we had a safety manual, which we still do, but we boiled it down to a 9-page document. It was up to 10, I think, now, which is our Code of Safe Practices, which encompasses about 75% of what people will see and what they'll be involved in on a day-to-day basis. And then we also have our Safe Matters website, which y'all will be going through here real soon. So if you like listening to my voice now, when you go through the Safe Matters orientation, you'll get to hear me some more. Maybe that's good, maybe not. And then we do orientations, audits, and training. The safety group goes out and does audits. So transparency of reporting, we already talked about that a little bit earlier. Haskell is transparent. When we do have an incident that happens on our job, I have what I call my circle of influence. So we have all of our ACIG peer group folks that are part of our insurance or risk management program, plus other folks that I know in the industry, and we send our stuff out, because again, if it's happening in our jobs, it's probably happening in other places. And that circle of influence, I like to think that we're protecting millions of people every year by some of the stuff that happens on our jobs that we're conveying and providing to other contractors. And then vendor pre-qualification, a lot of us go through that. We take a look at our vendors to make sure that they are the right ones. We have certain parameters that they need to meet in order for us to bring them on our projects. If they don't meet those parameters, what we normally do is we pick up the phone, we call them and try to work out a plan so that way we can bring them in, because sometimes we get into areas that it's somewhat difficult to find just the right contractors. Hazard recognition training, everybody will go through that. We're doing OSHA 10-hour and OSHA 30-hour training in-house, and then we also do specific hazard recognition training programs with folks as well. And then we have positional training requirements. Our PCEs and our superintendents have certain requirements, and PMs are going to be added to that as well. Safety data collection, we utilize a program called Predictive Solutions. So as we go out and we audit our projects, all that information goes into a database so we can track information and see where our issues are and see where where we can work a little bit better, work a little bit harder if we do need to come up with some training programs. So in 2018, these were our top things: daily inspections of scaffolds, perimeter protection not being put into place, loads properly secured and transported via forklifts. So those are the top 10 things that we see in 2018. All right. Our safety group, obviously we got Lance Simons, who recently became our Vice President of Safety and Quality, myself. We have 2 safety managers now. We've positioned our group. We have, like I said, we have 2 safety managers, Chris Bunch and Chris Hooters. So Chris Bunch, he will be over if you're working in infrastructure and transportation or FHE. Chris Bunch is your assigned safety manager, and Chris Hooter will be over anything that's in CPG. And we did that because we got kind of 2 different lines, and especially with FHE and the government, the federal contract, and there's certain requirements that are in there that's a little bit different than everybody else. So we kind of separated that out. Some of that acronym stuff that you see next to Chris's name, CSP and CHST. So for those of you that don't know, CSP, which is Certified Safety Professional, that is kind of in the safety realm. That's our benchmark. For those of you that might be professional engineers, we have any PEs in here? So we got a couple PEs, and then for architects, what is it? AIA is your top stuff, right? So within a safety realm, the CSP is kind of our AIA or our PE. And as a matter of fact, when you go through it, you'll find some PEs that are CSPs and AIAs that are CSPs, and vice versa, because there's stuff with having that acronym. There's some things that we can do and sign off on that you all as PEs or AIAs can do as well. CHST is the next one down from there, and STS is Safety Training Supervisor. Next week, I've got a gentleman coming in that's going to be doing some preparatory training for the entire safety group to get them all STS or CHST, and then there's some DOCs and vice presidents that are going to be in there, and some PMs as well. It's kind of a big deal because it's quite an expensive program to have somebody come in and do, but it's going to help set us apart. And then we also have 2 regional safety supervisors, Joe Sullivan and Brian Hunt. Brian will actually, his first day will be next week. And then we have Tim Rydell, and Tim is down at Blue Origin handling that for us right now, which is a very large program. Jose Tinerina, who we have over at St. Vincent's now, covering St. Vincent's and the Baptist Project. Adrian and Mike Nemo are out on the West Coast. Jim Lionheart's out in California. Charles Haley kind of floats around. He's not really in our group right now because he's cross-training and actually is a superintendent on a job right now and working as a quality person. So he's kind of a jack of all trades for us. Hopefully we get him back in our group. And then David Windsor is down at the largest project we're executing right now, which is NCL. Deanna Simons, who's going to be coming back to go up to 464. And that name is so we do have a little nepotism in our group. And so we're training Deanna Simons to be our next, be my boss, and I'm hoping to get her there in at least the next 10 years. I'll report to her. Hopefully it takes at least 10 years anyway. And then Carlos Estrada, who's our main safety manager down in Latin America, and then risk management, okay? So tenets of safety, everybody participates in safety. When you're on a job, if you see something that doesn't look right, it doesn't sound right, doesn't smell right, you need to make sure that you bring it to somebody's attention. Safety is everybody's responsibility. We need to be a salesperson for safety. That's how we operate. We want to go out there, and our safety group is solution oriented. We're not going to go out there and tell you what you can't do. What we're going to do is we're going to find a solution for what you're doing and making sure that we're providing the team with the same level of safety as whatever that standard may say that we need to do. So we're solution oriented. Have there been times that I've said, no, you can't do it? Yes, there's been some times, but for the most part, we try to find solutions over the 19 years, and that was one of the things we kind of changed because there are a lot of folks out there that are safety cops, and that doesn't work very well. Because we want to make sure that when we walk away, that people actually are doing the stuff that we ask them to do, okay? Then we try to keep it simple. That's where our Code of Safe Practices came in. you know, some of you may have worked for some other large organizations, and you look at their safety manuals and they're thousands of pages. Ours is not like that. It's part of the reason why we have our Code of Safe Practices, because we boiled it down to keep it easy, keep it simple. I'm a simple-minded person, so I had to keep it simple so that way I could understand what's going on. And sometimes we hack things out, because it's a problem if I go out to a job and a superintendent or construction manager asks me a question about a policy or procedure, and if I don't know what that policy or procedure is, there's a problem, because I'm the one that's supposed to know what all that stuff is. So when that happens, we get rid of things. So we try to keep it simple, all right? Which is part of the communication process. Obviously, every accident is preventable, no matter what it is. There's always something, you know, did we have a lack of planning? Did we have a lack of the right equipment and tools? You know, safety, every injury can be prevented. And obviously, you know, Steve Gibson's going to be coming up here next. He's standing here waiting for me to get done, because he's going to talk about, because they've done a great job over there at the steel shop. What are you up to, 10 years now? 10 years, 3 months. 10 years, 3 months. And you know, he says 10 years and 3 months. He knows how many minutes and seconds that is as well. But, you know, but it's pretty incredible that they've done that, and what they've done over there at the steel shop to go 10 full years. So as a leader, you know, if we see something like this, we definitely want to stop it. Can anybody pick out just one thing that's wrong with what these folks are doing? The ladder. What kind of ladder is that? It's an A-frame ladder, yeah, so it needs to be fully open, right? And what do we need around here? Guardrails, yeah. So that's just a couple of them. And of course, our mud sill material here is not correct. You notice how they kind of span in this little spot right here? So, you know, all of that's wrong. What's that? That forklift, that's directly above them. Yeah, that forklift, yeah, they probably had something on it, so. All right, so my last thing here, this is an acronym that I like to use, that SAFETY is SMART. Safety means awareness, responsibility, and teamwork. If we make sure we're always aware of our surroundings, we take personal responsibility and the responsibility of for our coworkers, and we all work as a team, that we will be very, very successful. Okay, so SAFETY is SMART. And I wish I would have come up with this acronym, but about 35 years ago, a pipe fitter for a company I used to work for won, I think it was $5,000 in a contest to come up with this acronym. And I've used it over the years, and as a matter of fact, over at St. Vincent's, we're using it right now because we had an issue there, and I told them next week, if anybody can do this and they say it exactly the way that I have it written right there, I'll pull a $100 bill out of my pocket and I will give it to them, which has got them, you know, interested, obviously. Of course, now if my wife will let me have a $100 bill to hand out, you know, that's a whole other thing. However, I want you to remember this, because it's true. Safety is SMART. Safety means awareness, responsibility, and teamwork.